Donkey Kong? What? So I've been wanting to put out a series for a while now that's a little easier to produce, something I can get out more frequently to fill out my release gaps. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a big gap between Canon Welding episodes, so I'm trying to mitigate that. But I kind of figured something where I could narrow in, really hone in on a specific in a series would be a good bet. And so I decided to start with Donkey Kong, specifically Game Boy Donkey Kong. So yeah, let's get into that. So just by looking at the box art, it kind of looks like just a straight remake of the arcade game. There's, DK, Pauline, Mario, they're all on a somewhat similar background. DK Jr.'s there. That's a little weird. It's different. But what's this guy? What's this little guy here? So this game was basically a launch title for the Super Game Boy peripheral. It was just a way to play Game Boy games on your TV with your Super Nintendo. So any Game Boy game could be used with it, but specific games would have different enhancements. Donkey Kong being the first. You can kind of see on the back of the box here, the top image is unaltered Game Boy footage. That's from the Super Game Boy. It sure makes a difference. Okay, in reality it does look quite a bit better with new colors. Some of the music is enhanced. Pauline has a little voice sample now. And it's even got this neat border around the game to make it look like you're playing on an original arcade cabinet. Pretty neat. So, growing up, I didn't really care for classic arcade games all that much. I liked Pac-Man and Galaga, but it never really stuck around with any of them for that long. I think it was the fact that you could never really finish them. But Donkey Kong was one of the few games from that era I loved. My first introduction to it was in Donkey Kong 64, and I remember booting it up just to go and play the arcade game. But surprisingly, I didn't actually know about this growing up. I first found out about it when it came to the eShop on the 3DS, I think in 2013. I think I had some leftover Club Nintendo coins or something, so I got it for free. And I was expecting, just regular Donkey Kong that I grew up playing, just, kind of crushed down into a Game Boy size. But once I got into the game, I quickly realized just how big it actually is. 100 advanced puzzles. It's got a lot more than just the 4 original stages. Okay, so before we get into the actual game, let's take a gander through the manual. Let's take a peek. Ignore the coffee stains. He's back. Alright, Donkey Kong kidnapped beautiful Pauline and has run away. Same as the original game, right? Can Mario capture Donkey Kong and save Pauline? I don't know, probably. So I've seen this page, and more specifically the He's Back line, cited as a reason as to why this game isn't a remake, but really just a full sequel to the original arcade, with both games being canon and being treated as separate events. Personally, I don't really like this. I mean, Mario games do tend to repeat themselves, but this just seems like too much to me. He's Back line just sounds like marketing. Donkey Kong hadn't had a new game in like 10 years at this point. I don't know, I haven't really seen enough evidence to suggest that this is a wholly unique event from the arcade game. So I just treat it as a remake. Anyway, moving on. We see Mario actually has an updated moveset for this game. He can do a handstand, if he wants to. And some of the moves from the later 3D games actually showed up here first, like the backflip from Mario 64, that was here first. Swinging on a rope, like in Sunshine, also here first. Some elements of Donkey Kong Jr. show up too, like climbing on ropes. There's keys in each level that you need. In fact, one stage at the end of the game is basically a straight copy of the final stage from DK Jr. But instead of freeing Donkey Kong, Mario's locking DK Jr. up. We've got a map of stages. I'll come back to that later. And finally, we have a short list of enemies in the game. They're listed as Donkey Kong's friends. 2 notable ones include Fire and Oil, of course. I mean, at least the Fire appears to actually be alive. They have little eyeballs. But yeah, I don't know if I trust being friends with both of these at the same time. Anyway, let's get into the game itself. So it starts off with a mostly accurate recreation of the original 4 levels. Mario just gets to the top and optionally collects Pauline's dropped accessories. The standard hat, parasol, and bag. So it's now time for a segment I call Robbie's Canon Questions that don't actually have answers and probably don't matter. How many hats does Pauline have? Or is it the same hat? And if so, how does she retrieve it and lose it again between levels? If it's not the same hat, then that's 100 hats. Is it possible that these are just random hats, bags, and purses unrelated to the kidnapping of Pauline? Is this simply a gameplay convention and has no bearing on story? Am I thinking too hard about this? No matter the answer, Mario drops the girders out from under Donkey Kong just like the arcade game, but then he wakes up and takes off for the Greater City area. From here he hits up the general video game environments: forest, boat, jungle, desert, plain, iceberg, canyon, and boss dungeon tower. The game has much more of a puzzle focus on the levels than the original, with each level exit being locked and needing a key that Mario has to navigate through. Pretty much laid the groundwork for the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series that would pop up a full 10 years later, only, there's no minis in this game. Like I said earlier, DK Jr. shows up every now and again, usually just to flip a lever back and forth or to throw poison mushrooms at Mario. And each world ends with a boss fight with DK, where Mario gives him a taste of his own medicine by throwing barrels back at the ape. Once we get to the tower, it's non-stop attack by DK with much less of a puzzle playstyle. These final stages definitely evoke more of the feeling of the arcade game, with one stage being an exact replica of 25 meter, compared to the truncated version at the beginning of the game. So Mario makes his way up the tower, locks up DK Jr., and corners the Elder Kong, forcing him to use a super mushroom to grow in size. Mario beats him anyway and rescues his girlfriend. After that, we cut to a scene of the two of them near a warp pipe and some question mark blocks. Pauline feeds Mario a super mushroom, just in time for DK to fall on him, and then they all take a seemingly friendly group photo despite what's to come in the next game. Personally, I really enjoyed this game. It might be my favorite original Game Boy game. It's for sure my favorite Mario series game on the Game Boy. It might not exactly feel like the arcade classic, but the puzzles are fun to figure out, and the music is absolutely top-notch, especially when it's enhanced by the Super Game Boy. Oh man, I almost turned into a reviewer for a second. Alright, let's get back to overanalyzing. So we know the Metro Kingdom from Super Mario Odyssey is the same city from the beginning of this game. But could we also use that knowledge to potentially map out the rest of the game? The rest of these little areas here? Surely only a lunatic would attempt. So we know the forest is directly adjacent to the Metro Kingdom, which is right here, so it's somewhere in there. But, pretty quickly I'm seeing this was pointless, as the next level is an ocean vessel, and much like our own Earth, the Mario Earth is mostly ocean. After the ship is a jungle, so we can narrow it down to any kind of coastal, tropical location. Anything like this could be a jungle. And after the jungle is a desert. So, maybe here, maybe down here. Potentially that maybe leading into this desert. This is like the Toast Arena area, right? That's the desert from Mario Odyssey. We also don't know how long this whole game takes. There's no night stage, there's no sense of time at all. If you just base it off gameplay, it takes about 8 hours to beat the game, but that's still a lot of travel all in one day. But maybe it's one day, and if that's the case, they probably didn't travel far. I'd say they probably went maybe down the coast, which, that looks kind of jungly, that's kind of deserty, maybe. But from here, it only gets worse, because after that, they get in a plane. And I don't know if you know this, but planes can kind of go anywhere. They could go anywhere in a very short amount of time. So the next 3 levels after the plane are an iceberg area. Oh, maybe up here. That leads into a rocky valley, and then a tower. And the tower is stated in the manual to be Donkey Kong's home. This could mean it's DK Isle, or it could be prior to them moving to DK Isle, as it's generally more associated with the third Donkey Kong. It just looks like the guy, so I can't remember if there's any line about it being a generational home for the Kongs. Maybe they've lived there for a long time, and this is DK Isle. In which case, I have no idea where that is. Maybe over here? Or over here next to Mushroom Kingdom. It could be over here even. I don't know. Or none of those places. So yeah, out of all the locations in Donkey Kong, we can accurately place 2 of them. Not bad, right? So that's Donkey Kong 94. It's a great little time, especially if you can try out the Super Game Boy enhancements. That really makes it for me. And that's why I give it 8 cannons out of 10. I'm not doing that. I feel physically ill from saying that. I'm sorry. That's not going in.